Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's webinar. Really delighted that you could join us. My name is Wendy from Best Nest and HMO Success, and every month I run a webinar with a guest speaker to talk about the latest trends or the latest strategies, or for us to learn some great tips and hints about what's going on in the world of property, because things are always changing and we need to keep up to date with our learning. So I'm really delighted this evening to have a very special guest with us. His name is Stuart Scott, and he's from Brighton. And I know he's going to really amaze us with what he's been doing down there in the world of HMOs, because Stuart really is redesigning HMOs for the 21st century. And I think what he's doing is absolutely fabulous. I first came across his work in, I think it was the YPN magazine, where he was showcasing some of his projects. And then we connected over Facebook. And I just introduced myself, and I invited him to come along and speak on my webinar, because I wanted to share his vision with you, because I think it's really inspirational. And I think for those of us who are in HMOs, I think what Stuart's doing is really changing the concept of HMOs and making it much more fresh and modern. And I know he's going to share that with us tonight. So Stuart, welcome.
Hello, Wendy. Hello.
Hello. Well, thank you so much for being with us. Really, really appreciate it tonight, Stuart. It's great to have you here. So Stuart, obviously you and I have sort of connected a little bit on social media, which has been great. So tell me a little bit about your background and kind of what got you to this point in your life.
So my background prior to the kind of the property side is that I spent most of my life working in the design and marketing agency world, and then I eventually, after I got as far as I could, I started my own companies. I built a design agency over about 7-8 years, and that company was acquired by another company, and I helped build another product design company after that one. And so I'd spent pretty much most of my life in the design field and the product design field. And eventually I decided that I wanted to spend more time with my family, because I was a busy company director, and I wanted to pivot my life across into full-time property development. Now, in the time that I was building those two companies, I was doing flip properties on the side. So that was very high-end refurbishments, houses, flats, where I do them up, add significant value to them, and then sell them for profit. However, I wasn't really keeping any of the assets. And that was fine for a while, and I realized there was a big opportunity there. And also, I could see that there was what I believed to be at the time an opportunity to transition product design and design thinking skills across to the property world, because I could see that there was a huge gap in the market and some opportunity to disrupt the market and use some of the innovation techniques that we commonly use in the product design world. And so about 3 years ago, I went full-time into property, and prior to that, my education in property, I would say, would be going to PIN events and going to progressive events. And then eventually, just as I did as a company director, we used to have non-exec chairmen who would help us scale the business to the next level, and they would usually be experienced business owners that showed you how to get through the stages of growth. So I did the same thinking, and I got a mentor, and that they helped me scale to the next level. They primarily helped me realize that I needed to work with investors, because obviously, even though I had some money to start with, I would run out at some point. And so very much, that whole kind of working with investors, building up your credibility, building up your profile, your track record, everything else, so you become investable and people work with you on a loan basis. That was something that I built up over the last 3 years. And from that, I've probably spent about 3 years in the HMO world, and I could see this opportunity to positively disrupt the market and instigate change. And very much that was about trying to see where there was gaps in the market, to try new concepts, new ideas. And very much the photo shoots, of which I'll show you some in a minute, are some of the experimentations and innovation stuff that we've been doing, to just see if we can kind of push the boundaries of what's happening. What's interesting about the timing of when I was doing this on the market was, I believe that the product of the HMO that we know was going through a bit of an evolution, And what we're seeing right now is a step change. It just so happens it was always evolving slowly, but I would say in the last 2 years we're seeing a big step change in the evolution of the product, and that's actually a very good thing for a lot of people, because if you can apply some of these thinkings into your product, you're going to see the effects that I see, which are being highly oversubscribed and getting some of the highest rents on the market, which I think you can agree is probably where most people want to be.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, Stuart. And I think that's why your work is very innovative, because you've taken some of those design principles that you've learned and experienced in other sectors of your life and of your work and applied them to property. And, you know, a typical builder will come in and say, do you want this magnolia and white like everybody else? And, you know, most developers who have no idea about design or have no idea about the needs of the tenant and aren't really thinking so much about the tenant's needs as their costs will just go, yeah, that's fine. But of course, it's very bland.
Also, you know, the very notion of so design, I think it's actually, you raised an interesting point there. So design is, or my definition of design is wider than interior design. So when people think of design, they think interior design, but the reality is, design thinking starts at the strategic level about what you're doing, that you're designing a product, you're designing a brand, you're designing marketing, you're doing user research, you're creating a product and a specification, and then you're creating the environment that you put it in there. You've got the exterior to the environment, you're actually adding value to buildings, so you're doing architectural design, and then the very final layer is the interior design. So when you're thinking, you know, design is quite expansive, and I think that, you know, what we're seeing, and certainly some of the big players moving into the market now from the US, you're seeing this very professionalized product design process being applied into the property sector.
Which is very exciting, but also a little bit nerve-wracking for people who have just used magnolia and white for 10 years.
Yeah, well, but I would flip that the other way around. I would say, actually, no, that's a huge opportunity, because yes, you might have done that, but actually some very simple techniques. If you, the way I always think about this is the 80-20 rule. So when you work on your next HMO project, you know, just apply 20% innovation and 80% what you know. If you do that, every time you're working on a project, you're constantly moving your product line, your range of products forward. I think as long as people are looking forward to how they're going to drive their product forward, i.e. listen to the customer and understand what they want, I think, and also instigate, you know, bring that into your new versions of the product. Ultimately, it's got to be driven by the customer. You know, I don't tend to do stuff just if it's, you know, it's just for me. I'm constantly doing user research. So, you know, only recently, you know, we constantly did research about the aerials that we were putting into the HMOs, and found that actually everyone wanted Cat 5. They didn't want the aerial sockets. No one was using them. You know, and you know, if you're running constant user research, your specification will change based on what the customer wants.
Yeah, so important, so important. Excellent. Well, listen, thank you very much for that. That's a great background about yourself. I think that gives us brilliant context about what you've been doing. And I think we now, Stuart, want to know more about your projects and more about your ideas, please.
Great. So what I've done is I haven't got too many slides. What I thought I'd do is I'll just show you some background on co-living, because I know that a lot of people that will be listening, that I do a lot of my public speaking that I do is around what is co-living, what does it mean? You know, I appreciate, you know, obviously when I started using co-living a couple of years ago, it was, you know, it was a bit different there, but now it's become a bit more of a hot topic. And I appreciate people might be thinking, well, what is it? Is it a posh HMO? What exactly is it? So I thought I've got that, and then I'll explain through some of the things that make up the experience, and then I'll show you some photos. So I'll jump on in. So this photo I thought probably summed up quite well the reputation of the HMO industry, which ranges from awful to even worse than awful. Because and you know what, I think we all have a responsibility. You know, there's a reason they've all got those place cards up, and that's because people have been doing the bare minimum, and a lot of rogue landlords, and a lot of substandard accommodation. And we all have to take some responsibility for this, and we all have to try and change, step things up a gear, improve the quality of accommodation for the customer, and change that reputation. So I thought that was if you that summed up the HMO world right there.
True.
So this is the mission for the company that I created, to reimagine shared living for working professionals. I don't do students, I just do the working professionals part of the sector, and create unique customer-centric spaces for people to live, work and play. Customer-centric is probably the key word in there. Everything that I do is customer-centric. No product that you see on the market in Amazon anywhere is created without customer research. I know that because I used to, I'd be paid by some of the world's biggest brands to create these products, and there is no way we would create a product without speaking to the customer. It would never happen. So customer research feeds into absolutely everything we do. So let me just so co-living. Now I know so co-living I see as being reimagining and rebranding the HMO for the millennial generation. So reimagining, that encompasses, well, what you're seeing is the product, the environment, the interiors, the facilities, the services, everything that makes up what we define to be HMO, the product. That's being reimagined. Now we've got the legal stuff that you need to do as part of the licensing, everything else, that's still in place, but everything else is about reimagining and seeing what, how you can push the envelope of changing what is being offered to the customer. Rebranding, that is where we come down to things like, for example, HMO. Now HMO, nobody really knows what it means. It's a technical term that we as landlords use, but no customer searches for a HMO. They don't know what it means, and it's not customer centric. Co-living has come out of the back of the US wave that came out, the co-working wave. And the reason it's so popular now is because it's customer centric. It's descriptive, a bit like shared living. So co-living is an Americanized term, and all it means is shared living. It doesn't mean 500 units, 200 units, 300 unit developments. It just means shared living. It's a new packaging, a new branding of a product that is a new evolution of shared living, being the HMO. But and the millennial generation. Yeah.
It's very powerful though, isn't it? Because it talks about the way people live as opposed to what they live in. An HMO, exactly. as you say, it's a definition brought about by government in 2004, and it's a definition that really means nothing to anybody who isn't in property. It's very much about the producer rather than the person who's going to use the thing that's being produced. But co-living is about the person. It's about the way of life. It's about the experience, isn't it?
It's product-led, it's experience-led, it's customer-led. That is exactly why it's now become a hot, because everyone who's started to see the co-living language proliferating through the HMO field, and I believe within the progressive communities that started to gain traction as well, has realised that it is a much better descriptive term than HMO. And not only that, HMO has such a bad reputation that in some respects, rebranding a new generation of it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Now, millennial generation doesn't necessarily mean that co-living is just for the millennial generation, but the millennial generation have very different needs and requirements, and they have changed the requirement for what we deliver to the customer. So millennial generation is not specifically for millennial generation because co-living is for all generations, but the millennial generation that have changed things in product design, and that's why their needs have become so important. So diving on here, so I thought I'd just show you some parts that make up the experience, because as you just mentioned so rightly there, everything is about firstly the customer and secondly the experience. So there's a few things that I break down that make up the experience that we create. Firstly, a lot of the work that we do is highly bespoke. That's not for everyone, it's just that our niche that for our company is highly bespoke. So a lot of the lighting, a lot of the furniture, we build it all ourselves, build it from the ground up, which I know some people listening to that might think, oh, that's crazy, clearly you don't want to be building it all. But that's the kind of bespoke environment design that we do. Now, it doesn't mean you have to do that, but it just means that you have to think differently about the spaces you've got and the products and everything that you put into there and how you create them. Community spaces, that's a hugely important part as part of co-living. You've got to have a good focus on creating good community space. So if I buy a property, I have to know if I can't create something amazing on the social spaces in there, I don't buy it. Because I know that the community spaces and building a community, you have to have great social spaces to be able to support that. Cafe spaces, what was once now kitchens becomes now communal cafe spaces. So the cafe kitchen concept that we launched many years ago is a core part of what we do. Cinema spaces, so you put in 4K projection technology and everything else so that you can create these dedicated spaces.
When can I move in?
I know, how cool is that, eh? It's good, isn't it? And do you know what? Number of times I come back and I speak to my wife saying, I'm pretty sure we haven't got this facility in our own house.
Yes, exactly. They're getting better than we are.
Yeah, industrial spaces. I mean, that was the signature thing. So when I launched, when I went into the HMO market almost 3 years ago, I originally disrupted the market and I kickstarted an urban industrial trend, which is pretty popular now. But back 3 years ago, there wasn't really anyone doing it, and that was my first disruption of the market. And I still use industrial. It's just I've become more highly bespoke. I work with a lot of artists. So I bring, given my background, it would be given that we work with a lot of artists that bring bespoke work into our spaces. Stylist spaces, are the customer, millennials, whoever that you rent to, they have the same aspirations that we do. So they want somewhere they can be proud of. So the same things that we want from our houses, they want as well. Snug spaces, that the bedrooms, that's hugely important. We've got we build our own LED mood lighting. We've got phone charging points. We've got blackout blinds. We've got luxury memory foam mattresses. So you're building the sleep experience just like a hotel. Private spaces, that's about the facilities that you put in the bedroom. That's their private space. So we're always building a lot of facilities in there for them. Smart spaces, that's very much about the technology, super fast Wi-Fi, fiber optic, broadband. We use mesh technology to bounce it around the buildings at full 100% power. Smart technology we put in there. Workspaces, we build workstations in for people who are hot desk. And finally, green spaces, often forgotten. Outdoor spaces require the same kind of design as indoor. So I just got some photos for you, diving on in. So this was a project in Eastbourne, just down from Brighton and Hove. This was probably one of the first ones we did almost 3 years ago. This is pretty much the one which kickstarted the urban design trend, the spider lights and all the other stuff.
Yeah, I love it. I love those lights, Stuart. They're really cool. I know.
I usually have about 6 months before I start seeing them start appearing on social media. But,
yeah, that's it. You set the trend.
Exactly. So we try new concepts. The thing is, I'm never, I'm happy to try and experiment new things. And a lot of the things you see on there, the tables, the lighting, and everything else, a lot of it is highly bespoke and it's made. It's not off the shelf. I had it custom made because I knew it would be unique if I did it that way. This is an example of a self-contained unit. Lots of great glazing, lighting, roof lights, custom bespoke industrial lights that were in there. Just some simple techniques, but you're creating almost magazine-esque environments for people to stay. That's not what you'd expect. And these ones that I'm showing you, they rented off plan before they were even finished. This is another one. This was a serviced accommodation unit, but you start to see how the same principles apply. You can create some I can apply it into any industry.
And I love your use of colour, Stuart. I think the orange is really contemporary. I remember I grew up sort of in the 70s and 80s in Kent, and so coming out of the 60s, and I wasn't really alive. But my parents loved orange, and my dad,
I was going to say
everything was orange, and
everything was orange.
Our ceiling, would you believe it? The ceiling in our kitchen where I grew up my dad painted orange. We had an orange ceiling in our kitchen. I mean, I'm sure in the 60s it was like everyone came around and thought, this is amazing. But, you know, when you get to the 80s, I was always saying to my parents, you've got to repaint the kitchen ceiling. It looks awful.
Well, the reason I've ended up using orange is very much when I was running my agencies. One of our clients was Tom Dixon, and Tom Dixon is the famous lighting designer who invented the mirror balls and the copper shades that you see in all of the bars, restaurants, cafes.
Yes.
And he was one of my clients, and I spent I did a lot of work for them for probably about 5 years. And fluoro orange was one of their key accents, along with cluster lights. And to be honest, a lot of that stayed with me. So the fluoro orange that I put in there and the high industrial stuff has just been really an evolution of that work that I did with Tom Dixon, inspired by Tom Dixon many years ago. But this picture that you're looking at here, this was a recent project, highly bespoke lighting. All of the lighting in there, we built it all ourselves. You can see we're using materials that are a bit different, and bringing the whole cafe kitchen concept in, corrugated iron, attention to detail, and you can kind of see how we've kind of applied that. This is the kind of kitchen area, big range cookers, metallics, just a lot of materials that in experimental ways where we're building little bespoke areas for storage and everything.
What's this bit on the end of the kitchen breakfast bar? It looks like sort of corrugated steel or something that you've got there.
It is. Well, that's actually a photo before the woodwork around it was treated, but it's, yes, corrugated iron.
And was that just for sort of decorative effect?
Yeah.
Wow, I love that. That's clever.
I wanted to work with corrugated iron for a while, and I just found an excuse to put it in there.
Perfect.
And this is another example. You can see where we're using materials in completely new ways. What we do is very kind of commercial, bespoke environment design. We're building these environments from the ground up. We're working with materials, stripping back to the fabric of the building. The lighting's bespoke. The tables are bespoke. The way I think of it is I'm creating a complete environment in there. Everything from the mesh lighting you see there, all fully designed and custom built from fabricated metal and everything. So I know that by me putting the extra effort in, it will create something that's unique for the customer. But the most important thing to take from this is that it doesn't mean you have to go out there and you have to do all this kind of crazy bespoke stuff. What it really means is I'm creating what I believe it to be an immersive environment for the customer. So when the customer comes in and they come in there, they haven't seen anything like this. This is like these are like the environments that they want to socialize in. And that's why I'm creating exactly the kind of tone that the audience wants. Hence, just this particular one that you're looking at here. I had over 150 applicants for this. I promoted it for, I think it was a week or so. I had 150 applicants that signed up for advanced priority viewings before it was live on the market. First people in the door took it. So that's kind of how building a pre-buzz.
Yeah.
And that's no different to the Apple phone. Why do people queue up for it? Why they create a buzz, they limit supply, they create an amazing product and experience, and people queue up for that. This is it's just an example how we work with the graffiti artists and the street artists. This is Cassette Lord, really famous artist in Brighton. I mean, that's absolutely huge. When you walk up the stairs, it's massive.
And also,
some of the
you've got another piece. Can you just go back to that previous slide, Stuart? So you've got the Cassette Lord on the left, and also on the wall facing as you come up the stairs. But then next to the room on the right, there's some 3D thing.
Yeah, that's a custom bespoke. That's full metal mesh with that indicates with the EAT like metal.
Yes.
The thing is, it's so much. It's so high impact on the graffiti, you could almost miss that. But yeah, that's a bespoke piece that just kind of just indicates that's the social space in there to go and eat.
Yeah, brilliant.
Bedrooms, you can again, we're taking the same kind of principles. Fully bespoke beds. We make the beds ourselves. We just build them. We build our own headboards. We build our own storage. All of the shelving, everything else, custom made for us. and obviously we're using a lot of the materials and urban materials and everything else in there. So we're setting a product, level, if you like, for what they come to expect.
So Stuart, when you say we, who is the we?
Oh, it's a small team, but I oversee. I have project managers, I have people who do admin. So I have a small team, and then I have some trusted builders that I work with regularly. I mean, I still have heavy involvement in the creative direction of everything that we're doing, just because that's how I managed to create these. This exact specification that I want, and you've got to remember, where I've come from. If I just did this purely for money, and it was just numbers, I think I would lose the passion for why I'm doing it. I'm enjoying taking my skills and applying and building and creating new things, and that have such a profound effect on the customer and the market, and being able to not only make good financial freedom from this, but actually be able to do something positive to change the market is a very good thing, because the market's has needed it for a long time. And if the work that I do, every time I speak or every time I inspire other people to raise the game, then collectively all of us are raising the bar and changing the market between us, and we will end up outnumbering the old landlords, who will slowly start to phase out as the new generation of landlords start providing different products to the customer.
And do you think this kind of model is scalable?
It is, yeah. I mean, obviously a lot of the stuff I do is highly bespoke, but I'm working on quite a few projects. So where you're seeing things that are bespoke, you've got to remember that I'm doing at any one time, if I've got, say, 4 projects on, I've got a production line for some of this stuff that you're seeing, because I can work with materials that I'm buying in bulk, and I can work the materials like the timber and everything in bulk. So, but bear in mind that when I showed you some pictures earlier on with the roof lights, there's some simple lightweight approaches to create the similar kind of feel that I'm showing you. There is always 3-4 different ways to create what I'm showing. This can be done on a budget. I'm showing you the kind of like the far end view of what can be done with this, but the reality is, it doesn't matter where you're living in the country. You can still apply some of the principles of what I'm showing here. Doesn't mean you need to have you have to hope that you've got an exposed brick wall, or you can got some natural materials, but you can, there's lots of cheaper alternatives like wallpapers and effects that you can do, and dressings and products, and the facilities you put in there that mean you're able to achieve and go in the direction of that without spending a huge budget.
Brilliant.
So I do often get asked, obviously it looks like it's really expensive. I was like, well, not really. I'm refurbishing the whole building top to bottom. I'm spending the money anyway. I'm just being clever about and smart about how I choose to use that budget when I'm doing it. And I'll show you some numbers in a minute, and you'll see, if my ROIs were small, you could say, well, actually, Stuart, you're spending a bit too much money on that. I could see why it looks like that. But when you see my ROIs and my returns, then clearly that's not the case.
Great.
So yes, just some more bedroom shots here. You can see the workstations that we put in. This is only one half of the bedroom. It does go off in the other direction as well. So here's some numbers for you. So you can see 3-bed. This was a 3-bed house converted to a 5-bed. You've got loads of facilities: cafe, kitchen, cinema room, roof terrace, everything else. Purchase 380, depositing cost 108. I mean, this is central Brighton, so it's quite expensive. Refurb 110, top to bottom, loft conversion, everything. GDV end value would be about 575. That's bricks and mortar. Recycle about 70% of my funds. Gross rental 44. Net profit 22,000. And an ROI of 33%. Now that's central Brighton, and central Brighton's a bit like London. Everyone says, oh, you can't do it, impossible. You can, it's just ridiculously hard, but that doesn't mean you can't. And actually, I prefer a market where everything's difficult rather than too easy, because everyone floods into the market when it's too easy. So yeah, 33%, and obviously 22,000 a year. How many do you need of those to replace your income?
Absolutely, no, it's great.
Oh yeah, my investors got investors in on that one.
Great.
And then Eastbourne. This is a mixed use one in Eastbourne, just down the road. Bought at 190. It's a bit cheaper in that area. Depositing costs 58. Refurb 170. There's a lot of work on this. You know, you've got huge extension at the rear and HMO above, self-contained, 2-bed self-contained flat, which doesn't exist, that we did on a prior approval, and a lot of remedial work. GDV 550 on this one. Commercial revaluation, because it is mixed use already, so it's guaranteed commercial revaluation. 65% recycled. Gross rental 56. My net profit per year 24,000, and an ROI and cash lifting of 52%. So again, you know, how many do you need? Yes. Most people, two of these would be fine. Now, obviously, you wouldn't probably stop at 2 because you want the insurance of having a few more, I would imagine. But point being, you know, it's not about volume.
Yes.
It's not about volume at all. It's about, you know, smart business is about, probably, in my view, certainly my view, more from less. You know, I can't think of anything worse than having a huge portfolio. I'd much rather have a smaller, lean, highly profitable portfolio.
I totally agree. You do. The one thing my husband Andy always says to me is, we do not want to create a high turnover machine, because there are lots of businesses out there with great turnover, but actually minimal profits of perhaps 10%, 10, 15%. Well, what's the point of that? You know, okay, if you grow to being a business that's got, you know, 10 million pounds turnover, then, you know, 10% profit. Yeah, I'd be probably quite happy with that. Numerically, that still works. But the work and the effort and the team building and the time that has to go into building such a big business like that, it's not for everybody. Even Amazon, we were looking at the figures for Amazon. Amazon is still not a massively profitable business, even though it has great turnover. It has massive turnover. It's the biggest company in the world, I think, bar Google. Yet the actual profits and what the shareholders get in terms of return is not that great. So I think there is very much an argument to be thinking smart about property, how you invest in property, what you invest, what you do to make money. Because there's lots of people out there who are turning over lots of money, but are they actually making any profit? That is the question.
Well, yeah, it's all about the profit line. It's, you know, you can be, you know, you have to be a bit picky about what you're buying. I mean, you know, it's and also, I guess, also looking a bit further into the future. What do you want to be holding in 10, 20 years time? When I assess a property, when I'm looking to buy it, I try and work out, is it in an area, or, you know, am I going to, in 10 to 20 years time, is there any risk that I might think, do you know what, actually, I probably shouldn't have bought this. I bought it as a short-term game, but didn't really want, you know, I might not want it in 10, 20 years time. You want to be buying for the long term. And so what you don't want is to just kind of expand your portfolio on a load of easy, cheap property, which is probably cheap for a reason. And then, you know, 20 years later, you're trying to get rid of all the stuff which is in areas that are not that great because you compromised on the location. So I think, you know, very much it's about having a blended, diversified portfolio, and trying not to compromise on location. Is, you know, it's almost like the golden rule, isn't it? You know, the location is, you know, you go outside that location, well, okay, you're taking a gamble there, but, you know, it's you just want to make sure that you're being very smart about what you're buying. Yeah, so that one, yeah, these had investors in that. So I work with investors in all of these, and then when I recycle, when I do my remortgage, the investors are paid back. And that's that. So that's just my website on there.
That's
I didn't
brilliant.
want to put too many slides on there because I thought you might want to just chat around it.
Well, absolutely. So a few questions that have sort of cropped up that other people have asked me, and which I've kind of got rattling around my head as well. So Stuart, somebody who's thinking of maybe copying your model or taking some of the best bits of what you've done and using it in their own HMOs, what would you say are some of the key design elements that, in your opinion and experience, makes the most difference?
Well, I would say, well, it really depends on where someone is in, you know, in their journey and what they're actually delivering to the customer at the moment. I mean, really, it's about taking a step back and put yourself in the shoes of the customer. Now, obviously, you could be several decades older than the customer, so there's only so much that will work. But the point being is, you've got to become more customer centric. You've got to think, everything on your specification is have you chosen, is everything the cheapest that you could put in there? Was there thought gone into the layout and the design and the area? I mean, if you think about the customers, first of all, what are they looking for? They're looking for somewhere to live. So is it in a great location? Is it well connected? What about the actual building? Is the building attractive? Is the space that they live in, what's the usability like? Is the kitchen been designed so that multiple people can cook at the same time? Have you given people enough seating so that if they don't feel sociable, there is actually still somewhere for them to sit, or whether that was sat down, whether it was on soft seating, whether that was on bench seating, whether that was on breakfast bars? Have you thought through a lot of those elements? Because there's going to be lots of simple things that you can do. Making something look visually nicer, as we said, that's only one element of it. Interior design is simply one element. I would kind of look at your product as a whole and think, well, okay, what's the facility we give people? What services are we providing? What does the environment look like? What's the location like? I think you have to look at all of those things, and that doesn't mean big changes. You might suddenly think, do you know what, actually we are using magnolia everywhere. It does look a little bit like your grandparents' house. It doesn't look inspiring. It doesn't really set the desirability tone for what the younger generation want. So at that point, if you have got a product that is, let's say, not desirable, then there are some simple things you can do. Now, firstly, if you want to keep the cost down, you can just start to just apply some simple design techniques. You can go onto Pinterest. You can go onto various Instagram channels. You can look at work that people like myself, where you take little ideas to bring little techniques into there. Or if you don't feel that way inclined, you could spend a bit of money on an interior designer, and they'll do half of it for you. So one thing I would say about design is that everybody has creativity. Some people don't have maybe the skills to maybe put things together, or create schemes or concepts and everything else that might find their way into it, environment design or interior design. But ultimately, everyone has creativity, so it should never be seen as a limiting belief that someone can do it. But if you're time sensitive and you haven't got the time to do it, then you could always lean on someone else with those skills and get them to help you in that field. I mean, even Julian Maurice, who does a lot of work in both progressive and the PIN communities. He teaches people on color theory and the basics, how to create on a budget basic interior design techniques, some of which are based on some of the work that I've done. So I always, if someone wants to learn, I don't do any training or do anything in that design field. I just do public speaking and that's it. But I would say that if you want to learn more, there is options to do it. And if you haven't got time, then you lean on other people with more skills that can provide it for you.
But it sounds like what you're saying is that it isn't, of course, just about the interior design. As you say, it's the design of the whole business to a certain degree. It's about the statement you're making to the market. It's about the experience the customer has. It's about the relationship they have with your staff, for example. It's about what they experience in living in one of your properties. And, I mean, I can absolutely resonate with that, because when we formed Best Nest, one of our decisions was, what do we call our company? We didn't just want to be called Rogers and Whittaker Large, because we thought that says nothing. That tells you who we are, but it doesn't tell you anything about what you'll experience. And it was over a couple of glasses of red wine, I believe, that we came up with the name Best Nest. The idea being it's a home, it's a place where you will be comfortable and safe and secure and warm, and it's the best one in the area. And it's been a great name for us, because we have the best rooms, the best prices, and we are the best nest. And funnily enough, we've kind of thought we could even develop a range of clothing and call ourselves Best Nest Vests. And in fact, our letting agency, because since we developed a letting agency, is called Best Nest Lets. So even tongue has kind of come out of it now. But it's been a great name.
But what you've done is, it's very much, what I've done, which is one element on its own will help. Of course, it will all help, but it doesn't. It needs to be all considered at the same time. The brand is what contains the values of everything that you're creating for the experience. You've got the brand, you've got the marketing, you've got the profile, you've got the experience, and then you've got the product. And actually, you could have. I have seen, you can have all the marketing. I have seen people have websites with lots of stock images, the co-living brand, a co-living related name on there. But yet the product is exactly the same. And the thing you got to remember is, the customers, they're not daft. If they see lots of stock images and a great brand, and then they turn up, it's the same product that was being substandard product that was pretty average. They're not daft. They're gonna it all has to be considered. So I mean, if you create a great product, provide a great experience, and wrap it with a great brand. It's great. That's just all three things brought together in a great combination. That's how you get a great reputation, and then people will continue to recommend your services. Because you got to remember that in the product design world, we would have something called a Net Promoter Score, and this was a way of scoring what customers thought of your services. So you send your customers a survey that says, could you recommend our product or service to your friends or colleagues, 0 being no and 10 being yes. Now, if you've got scores, if you've got people from 7, 8, 9s, that means they're advocates. If they're advocates, that means that they're going to go out of their way to promote your business without you needing to do any marketing at all. That's what every brand wants to get to. If you've got people that are low scoring you might think that's a bad thing, but actually that is the best user feedback you will ever get, because if they score you lower, there'll be a reason. If you know what the reason is, you can fix it. If you don't know what it is, then you're just going to carry along, and you could be missing out on business. People always think that you need to plow loads of money into marketing. You don't need to plow loads of money into marketing. You need to plow your time into user research. That's where you're going to find out the gems of information.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I think that's so true, that people tend to spend a lot of time on, or money on, the product actually, or they can do, or spending a lot of time on then trying to sell the product, but they haven't figured out what it is the customer wants in the first place. And if you don't do that, then you're barking up the wrong tree. You need to master your market in order to then create the right product for that marketplace.
And that isn't really rocket science. I mean, when we were running our agency, some of these very large brands, iconic brands would get us to do user research for them, and they would pay us huge sums of money to tell them what their customer wants, and we would run, and all we would have to do, we would do for that huge sums of money is we would literally just talk to their customer. Now, that sounds ridiculous in some respects, doesn't it? So they've paid us as a third-party agency to tell them what their customer wants. And what do? We just talk to their customer. We gather all the research together. We work out some commonality in the data that we see, some trends, if you like. Where you can see things that have come up several times, and you look for these trends. And then you put it together, and that gives you a kind of almost like a really good set of data that feedback about what customers want, what their concerns are, what they feel is weak about the product, the bits, the improvements they want, any reasons why they would suddenly stop using the product, anything else. And that is like a gold dust to the brand. And and when you think, especially even in where you have access to tenants, customers, chances are if you ask them any questions at all, or if you wanted to run user research, or you wanted to sit down with them and you buy them a load of wine and you get feedback from them, you get a face-to-face user research session, whatever you want to do, it's about gathering data. You need to have data. Otherwise, it's just based on what you think.
Mm. Mm. Interesting. So, Stuart, what are your plans for 2018 then? We're kind of middle of March. What's going on? You've got multiple projects going on at the moment, which is very exciting. Where do you see the future heading?
So, so I've got about 4 projects that are on at the moment. They will all be delivered by this summer. So I've probably got 4 or 5 new photo shoots that will be hitting the market over the next 4 months, which is quite exciting. So I'll have a load of content come. There'll be a lot of new. I've got a load of new concepts and various other things that are coming out, you know, in the next number of photo shoots. We are just about to launch our first boutique hotel. This is where we've taken all the learnings from the co-living world and we've applied it into a slightly different industry. So we've got a 13-bed hotel in central Brighton. We're unveiling a chain of hotels. First one is launching in April. Then there'll be a few more projects in the year, and I'll probably not do too much more than that this year because I want to have a summer off.
Very good. I think you'll deserve it by then. You'll need it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's absolutely brilliant. Well, Stuart, I have to say, you know, what you've brought tonight is very inspirational. It's quite different. You are definitely disrupting the market, which I think is good, but disrupting it in a way which brings creativity, thought, and personalization to the marketplace. So not in a way that's just disruptive for disruptive sake. You're doing it because
disruption.
Exactly.
I always think there is 2 different types. There's disruption for disruption's sake. Positive disruption is where you're raising quality. You're doing it for a good reason. You're inspiring people. You're helping raise the bar. That has a positive effect on the market. I think you're very right to raise that. Positive disruption is a great thing.
Absolutely. Well, I hope you carry on positively disrupting the marketplace. It's been really delightful having you on. Thank you so much. You've put your details there on the screen, so if people want to contact you, they can get in touch with you to ask any questions, maybe even to invest with you.
Well, and the final thing on that positive disruption, I would just like to say is, I know that I've shown a kind of like the very extreme end of doing highly bespoke everything else, but I just like to say to people that anyone can do this. If I can come into the market, if I can come in and I can disrupt it and I can change the market, then that means that everyone else can do it. Yeah. So this isn't about really just about what I've done. It's about showing that this market is wide open for change, and if you grab it with 2 hands, you can positively affect your market as well.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Well, that's absolutely a fantastic point to end on. I think people will be inspired. I think you've raised the bar, and I think that what you're doing is tremendous, and I hope it spreads out from Brighton to the rest of the UK.
Brilliant. Okay, well, look, thank you, Wendy. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely, Stuart. Lovely to have you on, and no doubt we shall watch your progress with great interest.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stuart. Bye-bye now.